They killed her and the baby. Even to this day, it still hurts that I left her there with that baby and they never got out of there, which does make me realise that I was the next victim.
Shall we kind of start from you telling me about your childhood? What was it like?
I had an amazing childhood. Unfortunately, my dad passed away when I was 14, which led me to, I didn't understand, was grieving procedure, which led me to leave home at the age of 16. I just wanted to go and be my own person. I've always been a bit of a funny individual, and I thought it was a bit of an adventure to become an adult. It was around about October of 1976. I had a boyfriend at the time and his parents had a spare house, so I went to stay there. And then that led me into meeting up with Anne-Marie, who I'd been at school with, who actually told me that her parents had a flat going. And from there on, I went to meet Fred and Rose, look at the flat and be accepted to the flat, and moved in within the week.
Talking about the 25 Cromwell Street, what was your room? What was the house? What did it all look like?
You go in the front door and to the left-hand side was Rose's room. To the right-hand side was the family living room, which was always very clean, very tidy, almost surgical. And then through the living room was the kitchen. Out the kitchen was the back garden. There was a set of stairs as you went in, and I was 2 flights up. I was at the top of the house at the front. And my room was just a room with what I needed in it. In between, my room was to the right. There was a room on the left with another couple in, and there was a little kitchenette in between us.
What was your first impression of Rose and Fred?
Fred and Rose were besotted with each other, absolutely besotted with each other, and it showed. Rose was always a little bit aloof, but Fred was a true gentleman, very friendly, a very good landlord. I didn't see very much of the family life because unless you were invited, you never went into the family area, which is right. When I used to babysit the children, it used to be a little bit of playing time and then straight to bed. So there was never really, and because they were a lot younger, they wouldn't really have had conversations in that respect anyway. But I never heard anything negative from the children. Once I eventually was asked to go through, and sometimes I go through to the kitchen to take my washing through, I'd see Rose having a go at Anne-Marie mostly, because it seemed that Anne-Marie had to get the children ready in the morning for school, and you don't give them a piece of toast without water. So she was quite sort of full on with Anne-Marie. It seemed like they were Anne-Marie's children, not Rose's. I thought it was a bit over the top, but then every family is brought up differently. I basically kept myself to myself. As I said, I had a boyfriend, so he'd come and see me often, and my siblings came to see me. I'd only see the children when they were going in or out of the house, or unless I was asked to look after them. And I'd just see, if there were any problems with the room, I'd say to Fred, and I'd see him then, or just see him walking around the house. Very rarely saw Rose, because she kept herself to herself. I just happened to be in the living room one night, sat with them watching a movie. I can't remember why. And Fred was in the kitchen doing something, and the doorbell went, and a red light lit up. And I just remember saying, oh my goodness, it's like the red light area. And I was just told, shh, Mum has her friends in there and we're not allowed to go in.
Did you ever see any reaction from Fred to it all? Did it seem to bother him?
No, he just carried on with what he was doing. They never argued. They seemed to be the perfect couple.
Do you think there was a moment where you got an impression that something might not be right in the house? Did you get any hints?
Yeah, it was the reason that I left was because I'd heard Heather screaming in the middle of the night. stop it, Daddy, stop it. Several nights in a row I heard the same thing. I couldn't fathom out what it was, but it didn't sound good, whether she was having nightmares or not. But I did ask, and a member of the family said, it's what he does. He feels it's his right to break his daughters in. I kept playing it back in my mind. What could I do? But I don't think I could have done anything different because I was a runaway. Nobody was going to believe me if I went and told anybody. So my best defence was get out because I couldn't be a part of whatever was going on. So I arranged to move out and didn't tell them until the day I was moving out.
How old was Heather at the time of that incident?
I think if I remember right, she was about 8.
So obviously now when we know about Rose and Fred, we, for example, know that a lot of things happen in the cellar. Have you ever been there?
Yes. Fred said to me one day, come and have a look at what I've done for the children. I said, oh, okay. He took me into the cellar, which was very dark, very dank. He'd painted bits on the walls. He'd put a little bed in there. He'd put little boxes of toys in there. But I'm claustrophobic, so I immediately said to him, this is very nice, but I need to get out of here. And I was in there probably 5 minutes tops, just looking at it and praised him up for what he'd done for the children.
I'm going to ask a question, you don't have to answer. But we now know that, among other things, Fred raped and kind of forced into prostitution Anne-Marie.
I can honestly say I was never aware of it. I just thought she was out with her friends. She wasn't in the house. I was never made aware of that.
So can you talk me through you moving out of the house after what you've heard and what you've seen?
I just made the decision that I didn't really want to be there with those circumstances. I found an alternative place to live, but something made me not tell them that I was moving out until the day I moved out, which was the day that I would normally pay the rent. And I just sort of said to them, I'm moving out. They went, oh, when? I went, now, because I'd already removed all but one bag full of stuff anyway. And I just walked away.
What was their reaction, Rose and Fred?
Shock. They kind of said, are you sure you really want to move out? Yes. I found somewhere else to live and I need to move out.
Did they ever try to stop you?
No. I think had I have told them that I was moving out before I moved out, I actually don't think I would have got out of there.
You mentioned Shirley. What was she like?
She became my best friend.
So when you moved in, she was already pregnant?
Yes.
Did you know anything about the father of the child?
Eventually she told me that it was Fred, but I disbelieved her because I thought, yeah, she's just, the landlord's my boyfriend. I just thought she was being a bit of a girl.
How old was she?
She was just a little bit older than myself.
So like 17?
I think she was nearer to 18. We were good. We had plans. When she'd had the baby, she was going to get a flat and we were going to meet for coffee. We were very good friends. She was a lovely person.
Did you stay in touch with any of the children after moving out?
I went back to see if Shirley had had the baby and if Rose had had the baby, because they were both due pretty much the same time. Shirley had gone and they said she'd left, which confused me a little bit because we were meant to stay in touch. But I went to see them and I went and had a coffee and saw Rose's baby, which kind of shocked me a little bit because it wasn't a white baby. I didn't realise at the time. And just had a general chat, bid my goodbyes and went.
Do you still think about it a lot?
A lot.
What do you feel?
I feel that had I had the guts to tell somebody, I don't think the outcome would have been any different. But what I think about is that Heather was innocent and I left and that left Shirley there and she never got out of it.
So what happened to Shirley?
They killed her and the baby. Even to this day, it still hurts that I left her there with that baby and they never got out of there, which does make me realise that I was the next victim.
At what point did you find out what happened to Shirley?
So it would have been a good 20 odd years after I'd left. Because I cut that side of my life off and just forgot all about it. And until the news came out that Heather's body had been found, or I'd forgotten all about it. Not forgotten all about it, I'd locked it all away because it was a part of my life that I didn't need to think about every day. As it broke on the news, it horrified me even more because the room that they found, the one behind the chimney breast, was my room. And the one that they found under the bath was where I bathed.
So when you found out about the scale of the things that were happening in the house, how did it make you feel?
Devastated, heartbroken for all those that had been lost, and angry. Because I then started to doubt my thoughts about what could I have done, but I still came to the same conclusion. I couldn't have done anything different. Nobody would have believed me. There's no different answer.
Fred and Rose were arrested in 1994. And then, as they were waiting the trial, Fred committed suicide. And it was only Rose left to present in court. How did it make you feel?
Angry that he'd taken his own life to get away from what was happening. As I say, Rose was the domineering one, and the last time they crossed paths, when they were going in and out of court, she shunned him, and I believe he couldn't take it.
When you saw Rose on trial, what did you think of her?
I hated her. I hated her for what she'd done, for what they'd done. And I can honestly say I stood in that dock and I stared her out. Fred had done this before he met Rose, and Rose had done it on her own, and then they carried on to do it together. So they were both as guilty as one another.
How was your life after Rose went to prison?
For a little while, I was a little bit, I wouldn't say traumatised, but I was a little bit confused over what they'd done, how it happened. Could I have spotted anything? I racked my brain. Could I, even though the sentence had been served, it still made you think about, could you, did you? But the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realised I didn't have any signs. There was nothing I could have done. So I then did my normal, shut it into another little box in my head and forgot all about it and got on with my family life.
But you still kept this quite disturbing information to yourself for quite a few years. How did that feel?
I kept it to myself because it was something that was a part of my younger days. And as I said, I didn't know what I could do about it, so it was just best to walk away from it and just lock it back in. But I still do ask the same question, and I still do think about maybe if I had, or could I have saved Shirley, could I have saved Heather? But then I still come to the same conclusion and lock it back in again. To look back at these events, how does it feel? It feels like, even though it was real, it's not real. It's a part of my history. The only way it affected me was slightly of a mental version when it all came out. But the fact that the person, part of this team, as I would call them, has been dealt with, that's another one off the streets.
How do you feel about the fact that the house was demolished?
Ecstatic. Because it should never have been left there. What they've done is amazing. It's now Remembrance Gardens and it's beautiful. I've been to see it.
I was going to ask if you've been there. How was that?
It was a bit daunting because I knew that's where it had taken place, but because they've made it so lovely, it was absolutely lovely to go and see it, and the thought that they've remembered all those that were lost.
Do you think it made you feel a bit better about Shirley and her memory?
Slightly. I'll never feel better about her.
And as I walked faster, I could hear his footsteps getting faster and faster. And then sheer panic took over. And I started to run towards the end of the road. And as I ran, I could feel his steps getting nearer and nearer and nearer, so close behind me.